All right, everyone, we got to talk about Hong Kong again because the protests there didn't end. The government, anti-government protests taking place there, the protesters had a list of different things that they wanted, and the government capitulated on the most important, which was that initially they were going to draft a law that was going to create data sharing with the Chinese government. So the Chinese government would essentially be able to prosecute Hong Kong citizens for laws that aren't in common. Hong Kong technically sort of kind of part of China, technically kind of sort of a little semi-separate under certain agreements, I believe with the British of all things, which is funny. Personally, I think that the answer to this is that we should grant asylum to every citizen in Hong Kong, because they're law-abiding, hard-working individuals, most of whom presumably, because it's a business empire, speak English. Why don't we just do that and let the Chinese absorb it entirely? Fucking just take Hong Kong, work out a deal with the Chinese governments for some sort of reparations involved with the loss of personal and business property, and then leave it at that. I say that semi-seriously because otherwise what you're going to have is a situation where the Chinese government is not going to allow Hong Kong to become a fully separate governing political entity. It's not going to happen. The Chinese will roll in and start butchering. At the same time, the Chinese are in a difficult position because Tiananmen Square, or something like that, where the government comes in and runs people over with tanks, that was a lot easier to accomplish back then than it is in the digital era now, where people have smartphones and record everything. Now, of course, the government there, like the government here, has technology to shut down phone signals and things of that nature, but there are always ways for the data to get through. People are very, very inventive. The Chinese government knows this. What they don't want is to crack down too hard on the protests there, especially for China to directly get involved as opposed to the Hong Kong's semi-own governing authority getting involved with its own police and troops. The Chinese don't want a situation in which the world at large, which is already breathing down their necks on trade, and human rights are a part of the cause given as to why, they don't want the world seeing, oh yeah, 100 students get gassed out by the Chinese. Chinese government firebombs apartment building full of dissidents that have barricaded themselves inside. Chinese government runs old dude over with an APC or something. They don't want that. It'll be used for propaganda. And it will be propaganda. You can support the cause, still call it what it is. The people of Hong Kong, therefore, between a cock and a hard place. The Chinese aren't going to let go, but they're also probably not going to come in with some massive push to clear the streets. And so the protests just keep dragging on and dragging on. At some point, because Hong Kong is so business geared and massive muscle of international banking, among other things, other groups will seek to get involved. At some point, you would think that cartels would try to airdrop weapons in Hong Kong or something at a premium to make money. There's got to be demand for them. There were a lot of protesters holding up "We need a Second Amendment" signs and stuff like that before. I think the Chinese government and the Hong Kong's authorities, I think they expected the protests to dwindle based on the fact that they'd capitulated on one of the main pressing concerns the protesters had. They kind of did, but now they've cracked down with lethal force, and they're getting more draconian and doing crazy things. And people's response is quite inventive, like using projectors to hide their face from facial recognition technology and stuff. By the way, China very soon will have its social credit system fully rolled out, which will make it an even more draconian society. It's not that big a deal, though. We're basically doing the same thing here in the United States, where Silicon Valley is fundamentally doing that as well. Because of its ties to banks, they can literally prevent you from taking part in e-commerce at this point based on the fact that you said something wrong on your blog 5 years ago. So it's basically the same as China's Commie social credit system. And this is communism in action. This is the remnant behavior of the Eastern Bloc, of far-left, centralized, heavily intervened in, busybody nanny governments. This is the eternal problem of hefty government. If you didn't have such a thing in China, then there wouldn't be a problem in Hong Kong now. What exactly is solved by cracking skulls there anyway? People are saying, hey, we want to be able to protest, we want to be able to have firearms. Under what ethical auspices could the government of any country reasonably construe that it should be able to ban such things anyway? Under what philosophical system is that necessary or proper? weakening your own people. Making your own people weak is not a good look for the government. That's what happens when you disarm people and take their money away and subjugate them to a million pieces of red tape. You've weakened your own population. You may have strengthened the state's stability and appropriated power in the state, but you've weakened the people as individual units. When a government does that, the tendency should be to distrust it, which is why I'm very distrustful of leftists over here, because it seems to me that they want people to be weak and reliant, and I have to assume that there's probably a reason for that. Why would they want to take my guns away? I'm not shooting anyone. Why would they want to take a bunch of my money away when I'm not going to be getting these social programs? Why would they want to regulate everything I do so that when I step outside I have to sign a waiver that allows me to walk across my lawn? Why would they want me to not be able to defend myself? Why would they want to entangle me in the legislation of other countries through complex trade deals and networks? Why would they want to tell me what I can read online? Why would they want to tell me that they're going to burn books and keep me from reading them for my own safety? Why would they really want to do all of these things? Maybe people need to start asking themselves that question when government makes proposals. Certainly the left used to do that during the Bush administration. All of a sudden it rolled over and now plays dead in the wake of Obama and says government's its friend. I think that they're a bunch of fucking sellouts. In China, though, there's no reason to sell out because the government's already about as draconian as you can get. We're moving, unfortunately, close to that direction, especially with regards to censorship. I mean, I feel sorry for the people of Hong Kong. Maybe the best answer to the situation so that you don't have mass casualties is just take the people of Hong Kong and move them elsewhere. Anyone in Hong Kong that doesn't support communism, yeah, come over and live here. That's fine. You know, maybe the Chinese can let them take some of their assets, liquidate them, and take them in money form with them. You know, 'cause some of these people are massively wealthy. I mean, have you seen Hong Kong's skyline? I mean, come on. It's basically a functioning city-state, which is why it's so wealthy. When you have a highly literate population that's largely unperturbed by the outside world, formerly guaranteed by an empire actually, and it's a microstate of that type that's totally homogenized, you become very wealthy indeed. You look at Luxembourg or something like that. Even Cyprus to a lesser extent. There's a lot of banking that goes on there. It's definitely a tax haven. It's some areas more advanced, more developed than certain other comparable areas of the region for a reason. Hong Kong has every advantage. China, I guess, just wants to parasitize and redistribute that wealth. It wants Chinese Communist Party members to go in and own all the banks, probably. China really is making an attempt to be imperial. It's starting to fail, thankfully, but it's very funny, by the way. People that have a problem with, like, a coup in Bolivia, where a corrupt narco-socialist got kicked out by his own people. It's not a coup. There's no bloodshed and violence. The military suggested he should step aside, and he did. That's not a coup. He did it voluntarily, by the way. They have a big problem with that. It's funny because they said, well, the West is being imperialistic. CIA glow-in-the-dark people again. Like, China's not imperialistic? Like, they don't fucking do the same thing? Don't let people demoralize you. You should advocate your own culture to be imperialistic on some occasions, yeah. Because otherwise you're a weak culture and you'll just be completely ground under. That's about all. Peace out.